To Rose and to all the family members of Big Dave, I'd like to extend to you our condolences and our sympathy, our promise of prayer. On behalf of Father Degeter, who is here with us and will speak later on in the Mass, but also Father Bryce Sibley asked me to please extend condolences as well. Today is the last day of school at UL and he had to be back there. Father Jim Fallon, the pastor that was here before me, also sends his condolences and prayers from Natchez, Mississippi. He was in flight from Washington, D.C. last night and could not make it here as well. And so several priests who had great intentions to be here are certainly here in spirit to pray for this family and the loss of Big Dave. And we also say thank you to Rose and this family for sharing David in your love with a larger community. This is beautiful indeed. And truly, we all know that right now, Big Dave has a huge smile on his face. He is eating this up. David, in his humble way, was also one who really loved being out in the community. And this is a wonderful tribute of everybody here that is here to say goodbye to him, but also to celebrate a wonderful and beautiful life with its humble beginnings, but as a man who has left an indelible mark upon so many people in this community, in this church, and in and around us today. And so he is really humbled by your presence here today as well. You know, there's always a grand temptation for priests at a massive Christian burial, of a funeral, to canonize the person who has left us. And we have to always be aware of that. And I would try to canonize Big Dave. I'll leave that for Senator Fred Mills later on. And also, canonizing means that you have to embellish. You have to add on. And we all know Big Dave. He knows his limitations. He knows his weaknesses. He knows that in the Irish we call it blarney. In common vernacular we call it BS. He has a great detector for that. And so I'm not going to stand up here and lie in God's house and say things that are not true. It's very easy to have a BS detector when you're around so many priests and politicians, right? And so Dave was very good at it himself. And so we here today, I'm not going to sit here and tell lies. I'm not going to embellish, but we don't need to. There's a great life. And Big Dave is a reflection of all of us. It's the weeds and the wheat that grow side by side, and yet the Lord loves both. And he allows them to flourish and to grow, that we leave an indelible mark. And so I could probably sit here and lie to you and say that Dave was meek and mild. And yet David was not meek and mild. He was very headstrong. He really had an opinion about everything under the sun. And it was very hard for him to yield to somebody else. And so David was not a meek and mild person at all. But we all have roles in society. Some people have to be meek and mild. Some people have to be very strong in their opinions to get things moving and get things going. And that was David. Big Dave is not someone who withheld his opinions. It didn't matter what it was, politics, sports, what's going on in society. He had an opinion about everything. And he swears that he is the Pope, infallible. But yet, at the same time, after he gave his opinion, he would just let things fall where they may, and if he's proved wrong, he'll eat crow later on and say you're right. But at that point, there's an absolute certitude in his mind that he is right on everything. You know, when I came here 3.5 years ago from New Orleans, and I was there for 13 years, and my last assignment in the lower Ninth Ward, but also at St. Augustine High School, I was utterly amazed when I first met Big Dave, and he knew more about the athletes there at St. Aug, and I followed the football team at St. Aug. I actually was in the weight room with the football players, and Big Dave knew more about athletes over in New Orleans at St. Aug, about their lives, about their athletic abilities, about where he thinks they ought to go to play, continue to play ball. He really had an encyclopedic mind about athletics and athletes. And it was amazing when I got here that he would talk about St. Aug so freely as if he lived over there and taught at the school himself. But also with Big Dave, you know, we have our parish fair every year in October, and we also have had many youth gatherings here trying to get things done among our youth because there's so many temptations, there's so many hardships, and that was very dear to David. And also we used to have the parish fair over in Park Hardy. So when I got here, the first year in 2011, we still had it at Park Hardy. Then with the parish council, I said, let's evaluate this and see what's the best way to go. And so the parish council met. Big Dave came to the parish council. He wasn't a member, but he was the mover and shaker of our parish fair. You know, you can't ignore somebody who's getting everything done. And so when we got there, he never liked committees. So I'm not going to lie to you. He's not a collaborator. And so after the meeting was over, he would say, Father, you're the pastor. You have to call the shots the way you see it. That's interpreted to mean, Father, do it my way and ignore them. And so many times then he hated when I said to him, well, I have to talk to Ms. Jacobs, the parish council president, and all the parish council members to see what they have to say. Father, you're the pastor. Do it this way. And it really irritated him. But then after a while he said, okay, we'll do it. There were times in our meetings, honest to God, that he would say, Father, I'm not working on the parish fair anymore. I'm not going to do a youth gathering anymore. I can't deal with those headstrong people. Imagine. And yet, he'd come back to the meeting. Because as Dave, there's something greater and more important than him. Even though he's strong in his opinions, he realizes there's something greater than he in the work of the youth and the work of the athletes and the work of this town of Breaux Bridge. And so very important for us to understand that other side of David that, I don't know why I'm calling him David. It's his baptismal name, but we all know him as Big Dave and Big Daddy and all that. So, but I think the most important thing that we see in Big Dave is that he really took an interest when he was on that side of law enforcement. He saw who was going to jail. He saw the wasted talent. He saw that we had great athletes in and around this area, but many times bad decisions were there. He saw the breakdown of the family. And he saw many times that there had to be men that would step up and be the father figure in the family and in society in order to guide young men, especially athletes, in the right direction so that they understood where they were going. One of our sacred scriptures that we read at the Masses of Christian Burial, when we think about this widow who had already lost her husband, and now she is in procession with the casket of her only son, and as they are taken into burial, it says Jesus was there, and he was filled with great compassion. His heart was truly moved because now this woman, no longer with a husband, this woman no longer with her son, is now alone. Jesus identifies with those who are broken. Jesus identifies with those who have a void in their lives. And so it was that Jesus then touched the casket and said, young man, I bid you get up. The power of Jesus over death, the mercy of Jesus from the depth of his heart to see a woman suffering. Yet at the same time, in a small way, David represents that compassion, that love of Jesus. When he sees the breakdown of a family, when he realizes that this man's got potential, this young man is not only a good athlete, but he's got potential to go places in the world. But there's allurements that are out there, and there's a lack of support that guides him in the right way. Many of us know when we have great athletes that they get trapped by so many of the false gods that are out there. The prima donna mentality, that just use your athletic abilities and you'll get ahead. Dave never bought into that. He realized that with actions come consequences. He realized that if you wanted to be a member of society that's functional, you had to step up and do your part. That life was not about handing you things, it was about doing your part in order to get ahead. And so constantly, he invested himself to make sure that the younger generation knew what was going on. He didn't set himself up as a paragon, as an example to be followed, because he knew his own limitations. But many times he never hesitated to call upon a great athletes, Kevin Falk and an early Doucette and so many others, to come in and share their stories and to leave an indelible mark on these youngsters who would hear and listen to the stories and to realize that professional athleticism is only for a select few, to realize that even when you're there, it's a very, very short career. You better look at something else in life other than the athletic abilities that God has given you, and to realize you have to do something else to invest in society today. And so David was one who really understood what it meant to give back to the community in such a wonderful way. You know, when we think about the sacred scripture today, when we're in the Easter glory, and Jesus says, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. Have faith in God. Have faith also in me. In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. I go to prepare a place for you." This intimate love of Jesus, not for humanity, but for every human being. Each and every one of us has a place identified in the heavenly glory for us, and Big Dave was called there a week ago today. It was shocking to all of us. We weren't ready for it. We all knew Dave had a big appetite. We all knew that he didn't follow his exercise regimen very well. He enjoyed life. And yet at the same time, we thought he's still going to be with us for a long time. We do this with each other, and we forget that when the Lord calls us, he calls us. Many times our time is not God's time, and God's time is perfect, our time is imperfect. God's ways are perfect, our ways are not, and we're not always attuned to that. But the Lord called Big Dave home at the perfect time. And honest to God, it was 5 weeks ago down the street at St. Bernard Church when another great figure of our community here, Johnny Raymond, was called home. And I was really, truly tongue-in-cheek making a joke in the homily. And I said, I think when Big Dave gets to the pearly gates, he's not going to be met by St. Peter, he's going to be met by Johnny Raymond. And Johnny Raymond is going to say to him, "Big Dave, did you pay your tab at Buck and Johnny's?" I didn't know David was going to get to the pearly gates that quickly. But Dave came to me in a dream last night. And Big Dave said, "Father Joe, you're the pastor. Don't listen to the parish council. Look at all these people. Take up a collection and pay my tab at Buck and Johnny." Big Dave had more angles than Euclid. He always could work things very well. And yet, I also remember when we were at the repast for Johnny Raymond, he asked the rhetorical question, who's going to fill his shoes? Many times we think that, but we don't fill somebody's shoes. There's only one Johnny Raymond. There's only one Big Dave Thibodeau. And yet they did what they did in this side of life, and we still have work to do. And so there is a void. And yet there's work that has to be done among our youth, among our athletes. And so it's very important that someone else step up and do this. There are so many other people that could truly pay a tribute to Big Dave better than I, because I did not know him as well as many of you did. And it's a wonderful way of giving him honor this day. And yet David Thibodeau is someone really who, in the Latin we call it sui generis, someone who's in a class by himself, someone who walks to the beat of his own drummer and not somebody else. And so that was Big Dave. He did things his way, and that's the way he wanted it. And so as we celebrate this wonderful life this day of a wonderful, great man, may we realize that he has left a void. I don't know what we're going to do with the broadcast of football games. Now, I am a lover of football. I played it in high school, and I'm just one of those old school ones. I want to know who's got the ball, on what yard line, who took the handoff, who made the tackle, who made the penalty. When you listen to Big Dave, you don't know what's going on. Within 3 months of being here in Brobridge, I knew every bank, I knew every restaurant, I knew every hairdresser, but I didn't know who was on the field. So we have to adjust ourselves to that, to Big Dave's ways. But truly, we bid farewell to him as he was, we know very well, a great eater at Buck and Johnny's and all the eating establishments. May we also remember the book of Revelation. That is chapter 19, verse 9, and that is that Jesus is at the heavenly banquet. So indeed, as Big Dave goes to meet Johnny Raymond at the pearly gates, I'm sure Johnny Raymond's not going to say, "Did you pay your tab?" Johnny Raymond's going to point to the one at the head of the table and say, "He's paid the tab for all of us." And so Big David lives in the resurrection.